Well, hello and welcome to Alpha Anywhere demo and Q&A webcast. I'm Dave McCormick, VP of Product Management here at Alpha Software, and I'm pleased to be joined today by Dion McCormick, no relation, our lead solutions engineer, as well as by Sarah Mitchell, head of our documentation department. Dion will be joining us a little bit later on to do a presentation, which I think you're going to find very interesting, probably around 10-15 minutes into the hour. But until then, you've got me and Sarah Mitchell to entertain you. And we actually have I've got a little presentation that I would like to show you, something that I built over the last couple of weeks, still a work in progress. And it has to do with the Alpha Anywhere security system. Of course, we're also here to take your questions. So you could type those questions into the questions box of the GoToWebinar control panel. So let's get started. First of all, Sarah, a quick question. Can you hear me and can you see my screen?
Yes and yes.
Excellent. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. I'm going to go ahead and show you a little pre-recording of the thing I put together. And let me know.
So right away, of course, we have some UX components for handling security, but what we don't have is really a great way to do a password reset. And often you want to allow users to do that themselves. And the typical way you do that is to actually send an email off to the user to verify that they have access to that email account, and that's usually considered good enough. I mean, if you're not doing two-factor authentication, that is. So I built one here, and I was thinking if we can have this sort of built into Alpha, that could be really helpful. So let's imagine I've come here and I've forgotten my password. So I'm going to click.
So just a quick preface, as I was putting together an application, probably a lot of you have found this, you decided to rely on the Alpha Anywhere security framework. And it's a pretty good system. It definitely keeps pages and components safe. It can stop individual controls being looked at by users who don't have sufficient permissions. But one of the things that I found I didn't like quite as much was the way that password resets were handled. There's some functions in there that will automatically reset that password to a system password. But what's much better is to sort of use that modern technique of when you need to do a password reset to actually send that link off to the user's email address. That way you can really verify that it's them. That way they know what's going on. So in this video, I just wanted to show you that system, and it wasn't a great preference, but it's actually a video I put together for Selwyn Ravens, our CEO, to show what I would love to have built into Alpha. But in the meantime, even if this is not built into Alpha, I am very happy to share this framework with you. So without further ado, let's carry on.
I'm going to click here to reset it, and it's going to take me to a screen that is going to simply ask me for my email address. So I'm going to go ahead and type that in, and I'm going to click reset password. And also watch for this visual effect. Look at that. Cool. We use that new card technology with animation to do that. So it says your request has been submitted. Please check your inbox for a message containing the password link. Now it's always going to give you that message. We don't want to let on whether or not it's been found in the database or not. That's something that we used to do, or it used to be common, but that's not a good technique anymore. So it always shows this message, and then behind the scenes it goes and looks me up, and it sees if I do have a record in the database, it sends me out a special email. And let's go take a look at that email. It just arrived here in my box. And it says, hello, a password reset request has been submitted. Please use the link below to reset your password. A little formatting error. I should probably move that below. But let me go ahead and click the link. And this is going to take me to a page which is simply going to ask me for my new password. Now bear with me for a minute because Safari is a little slow when it comes to entering passwords. I think it's trying to do some sort of lookup or something like that, but I don't think this is Alpha's problem. Probably just my Mac. So I'll give this a second. And another second. Okay. Okay, so now I've changed my password. Now that that's done, what it should do is it should now redirect me back into the application. But it has in fact logged me in, as I'm going to show you here in a second. Because if I go to the end of this, and I go to my login page, you'll see I'm already logged in, so it automatically moves me on to the page that I'm supposed to see, which is this sort of needs to be styled ambassador portal page. All right, so what it did there, of course, was it had to have a database in the back end that keeps track of these reset requests. And the reason for that is because if I don't want to allow these links to be used more than once, and I also don't want them to be used if too much time has gone by. I've set a 20-minute time limit on that. So if I click on this now, we've just used it, so it should not let me back in. And in fact, it gives me the message, this reset link has already been used. To get a new password, go here, and that takes you to where it all began, right here to reset my password. But if I go down here, let's say I find an earlier one. This is from 11 this morning. I'm going to go ahead and click on that link. And in this case, it's going to tell me the reset link has expired. To go get a new one, click here. Basically the same thing, but for different reasoning. Now in Alpha, I did this using a couple of web pages and a couple of components. Well, I think 3 web pages, 2 components. And it consists of this first web page. That's actually not the first place you go. The first place you go is to request a reset, and I've built that inside a component. And all the reset request thing does is it takes your email address and it displays a message, and then at the end it runs some Xbasic code. I think it's a server-side event. Oh no, I think I'm sorry, I put it all on the button, haven't I? Controls. Password reset, where it runs a action and it does an AJAX callback. And my AJAX callback code is here, function request reset, sorry. And this does a bunch of things. First of all, it checks to see whether or not it exists in the database, and if it does, it writes to a database. And that database, I'll show it to you over here in MariaDB, is in MariaDB, sorry, and it's basically just an ID, a GUID, an email, a timestamp, and whether or not the record has been used. So 1 indicates that it has been used. So if I refresh this, you'll see that our latest requests, let me go ahead and refresh that. All right, our latest requests have been used, and some of them haven't. Let's see, that's what does that, and then it sends out an email. Right now I'm having it send out an email using Spark.
Yeah, the video quality on this is really grainy. So if there's something in particular you'd like to see, that's fine. I can also send out a link to the actual high quality version of this video afterwards. So I apologize for that. It's just something about it going through GoToWebinar. Usually it's better, but that's what we got. So we got another minute or so on the video.
Post. I'm actually using the key that you provided, Selwyn. And I'm going to close that. I'm not going to save my settings. And then the other part of it are these 2 pages here. So the request reset is what sends out the email, but this reset part 1 is what takes the incoming response. In other words, that's what the email links to. It links to this web page right here, and we'll go right into source. Oops, click source. There we go. I've actually sort of written down what the pseudocode is for this page, as well as to explain what all the coding is underneath. But basically, it checks to look for a GUID link. It displays a message whether or not it's expired or whether or not it's been used. If everything is A-OK, then what it'll do is it'll reset the password to a system-generated password, because that seems to be really the only method that we have. Then it marks the request record as used. It logs the user in using the new password, the system-generated password, and it takes them to reset part 2. And reset part 2 is really just the component that, actually, right here, is really just the user change password component. It's already one of our UX components. I just modified it a little bit to hide the username and password. We don't make them, and old password, we don't make them enter those again, because they've been set as session variables earlier on. So they're used here, so they just need to enter the new password and so on, and they hit change password.
All right. Well, I apologize again for the graininess of that video. I will test that out next time I do a video on GoToWebinar. Usually they turn out better. But again, I can send you the actual video if you just want to send an email to guides, GUIDES at alphasoftware.com. Not only that, I can send you out the code that's used behind it. But I would love to actually get any feedback that that you might have in terms of password reset, because as we make this a better system, like for example, one person suggested, can we send out a code like do two-factor authentication? I think that's a great idea. So like when you do the reset, it should also probably send a text message to your phone, for example, and have you enter in a code that way. So if you've got suggestions, send them in while I'm building this up, and we'll get them into the product. So that is about it for me for this presentation. Let me see what we can do here. Let me see if there are any questions that we can take. And also we're here joined by Sarah today. Dion will be with us in a moment.
So Dave, there was somebody that was asking about, I want to send a SMS message to people, and we have that. Two-factor authentication is in Alpha Anywhere. And there's several different ways that we offer two-factor authentication. You can send an SMS message. You can have them enter a Google Authenticator code. And I think the third option is an email. Let me go check real quick.
Are you talking also about the one of the pre-made UXs that come in the security system?
There is a, yeah, email's the third option. There is a UX template that shows how to set that up.
Right.
Where is the chat? Let me put the documentation link in here for you guys.
Excellent. And right now I'm sharing my screen, and here I am in Alpha Anywhere. I'm going to go to New, choose a UX component.
Yep.
And then down here where we keep our security ones, security framework. And there was one which had the word login 2FA. Here we go.
Two-factor authentication.
Two-factor authentication. That's the preferences one. But there was another one which had a login. Maybe it was just this login one. I think this login one also had two-factor. Let's take a look. Let's open it up. All right. And it does actually. I can see
that's
right
the
here.
one
It's got the
that has
two-factor
it.
authentication message right in it. So there's some notes and stuff on how to use that as well. Very cool.
Yeah. So that's the login component for logging in, and the other one is showing you how you could set up an interface for your users to choose how they want to receive the authentication message.
Makes sense. Thanks. Let's see if there are any questions that we can get to here. Excellent. Oh, it looks like a bunch of people are looking forward to having this in. So someone would like us. Wonderful. All right, great. Let's see if we could take another question, maybe one that's not required to security. Oh, here's one. And Sarah, maybe you can answer this one. But he said wanted to play videos in list and place editing. Ooh, but they're all .swf files. How can I play them? You
Not
don't.
very well.
You don't. You know, we have
the video library in Alpha Anywhere? That has to be the video library in Alpha Anywhere. We'll look into that and see if we can get those links changed for you guys.
Yeah.
We
have a lot of Swift content, and we were building that using a product called, what were we using? I forget which one it was. It was yeah, I think it was Jing, exactly, the people who make
TechSmith, something like that.
Yeah, from TechSmith. And so someone in particular, our co-founder has done probably 1,000 of these. We actually have had a person go through and take all 1,500 something videos and go through a process and manually convert them to MP4. And that's really kind of what you want to have playing in browsers nowadays. That just Flash is really just no longer supported. There are tools that will automatically convert a whole bunch of Swifts over to MP4s for you, but you really shouldn't be using Swift files anymore. Is really our view on that.
Yeah, and a while ago we switched over to only producing MP4 content, but there's still some stuff in the middle that hasn't been caught up just yet. To the specific question of in-place editing videos, like they're all on YouTube. I've posted a link in the chat to our YouTube account with search for those in-place editing videos. So you can go check that out.
Excellent. Right. So thanks very much, Sarah, for doing that. So you can find that. Yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't understand the nature of the question. They're one to play particular ones from us. Okay, yeah, that's true. All of our videos, you're going to find a YouTube equivalent for it. So, you know, search by name. If you get stuck, of course, send us an email to guides@alphasoftware.com. We'll point you to the MP4 versions.
Yeah, and I think most of those ones have like a Vidler link below the original links. But what probably needs to happen is we should just pull out all those old links anyway, because
they're
you're not gonna be able to play them.
Won't play in your browser. Yeah, exactly. So let's see. I think I just got an email there from Dion. Dion, are you back or not yet? I guess not. It's fine. Let me go ahead and take another question. Is the query which populates a list available in an Xbasic in the E object or in an AJAX callback? Or is it available in JavaScript so I can pass it back to Xbasic in the AJAX callback? Oh, that's interesting. So, so you want to know what the query is that's been performed on a particular list when it's being passed back. Sarah, do you have any insights into that one? I don't know if it's part of E though.
I don't know if it's passed into the E object on an AJAX callback, and I'm not sure where that is stored. We would have to dig into the list a bit to figure out what the answer to this one is.
Can you send us off an email to guides@alphasoftware.com so we can take a look at it and get back to you and share the answer? Question, can we do that security stuff that we just had in a different language? Yes, absolutely we can. And when I send you along the files, you'll see how to do that. It isn't very much code in there. And I'm going to abstract those messages into variables up at the top, so you'll be able to make it even easier. But there isn't a lot of messages to abstract, so it's not that hard to change. And someone said, oh, I've been avoiding passwords in email, and which I think is fair, and sometimes skip passwords in exchange for new code at each login. I think that's a great idea. Let's see something else here. That looks like it. Let's see if there are questions here at the end. Oh, here's one. How can you play a Vimeo video through a hyperlink on, say, a grid? That's
like open up the video in a pop-up?
I think that would be it, right? So when you're building the grid code, if you've got in your database the hyperlink for the video, you would put in an HTML template that has that in it. In fact, you could probably steal the one from Vimeo and make it really nice.
Yeah, does Vimeo have a...
Vimeo would have like a player as well. Yeah.
Oh, it looks like Dion might be back.
Is he really? Hello, Dion, are you there?
Yes, sorry about that delay there, everybody. But obviously, you probably had more information with this team than me, so it's probably a blessing in disguise.
I don't know about that, man. We were struggling. No.
Oh, no problem. I'm ready to share.
Fantastic.
You know, it's better to share.
It is better to share.
And I'm just going to dive right in.
Great. Let me go ahead and make you the presenter.
Thank you.
I've clicked that button, so you should see a dialog.
Cool.
And there's your screen.
Great. So we're going to cover two things. One is a really cool UI technique, which is really just super simple. I don't know if Sarah has covered in this past, but I want to reinforce it. And then secondly, a little coding. So it's a little code to it, but one of the most powerful features I have found in my system in terms of my little arsenal of tricks that makes life a lot easier. So I'm going to jump into my, there we go, go to, oh, no, there it is. There we are. Go into our development environment. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to create a new UX. And the idea behind this is I really want to make life easier for my users. I want to create a great user experience. And there's a lot of little neat tricks you can do. And one of the coolest tricks is in the text box control. So I'm going to go ahead and add some text boxes here. And let's say I go first name, last name, and then actually let me delete this. I'll just do it this way. First name, last name, address, city, state, zip. Okay. So very standard. Almost every form has checkbox or text boxes associated with it. And if we do a little working preview, you're going to see that it generates a nice little input so I can type in my information. Now you'll notice the style of this text box is we have a label up top. And as I'm sure everybody knows, you can modify that. You can really go into, and I'm going to scroll down here. Let me go ahead and shrink this so it's a little easier to see. There we are. A little easier to focus on that. But we have a position capability. So right now it's above the field, but to save space, we can put it like on the left. And you can do this on an individual basis for my control. So now I've got a first name here to the left. So it's a little denser representation there. And what's nice is that once I kind of get what I like, one of the nice tricks, which I'd like to cover again, is you can click a little button. So notice I've selected my first control where I've modified the positioning of the label. Well, I can click over here, position. I can click here, and this allows me to basically copy that to my other controls. So the neat thing is once you have control that's working great, it's a child's play to go ahead and make the other controls look the same. So I'm going to go ahead and click set there. And do you hear that? There's someone flying pretty low coming in there. Okay. And so now you'll see all of my controls have a the information or to the labels to the left because it's copied that property over. And that's really handy because when you're doing a bunch of controls, you can just quickly set one up just how you like it and then copy those parameters to other parts. But there's a downside to the current label technology. It takes up a fair amount of space on my screen, because you have to block out the space here for the label, whether that's above, below, etc. So I'm going to go back to design. I'm going to go back to my first name. And recently, this is a little while ago, there was a new feature called float above, which is a really cool feature. So let me go ahead and show you how that works. So I'm going to go ahead and select float above for my first one here. And I'm going to do a working preview. And you'll notice something. There's no label outside of the control, but there is a label in the control. And watch what happens when I click here to enter my first name. You'll see that the label disappeared from inside the control and kind of moved up here to the outside control. So it's a really cool feature that allows you to save space, but it's really a slick user interface element. So let's go ahead and copy that. Again, I'm going to click on position. I'm going to click here to copy it, and I'm going to copy it here. Notice that it remembers where I copied stuff before. And it will apply those to all those and then do the rendering. Now you'll see I have first name, last name, so I can go John Doe. So it kind of gives me a physical or a visual interface to show you what it's doing in terms of the location of that. Now, it's really handy. You're going to see this a lot in like login pages and other things like that. It, again, doesn't change the world, but it makes for a much nicer, more modern user interface, showing this dynamic kind of moving of text and showing people and other people, other elements there. Really, really handy, and I'm using it a lot more these days because it really is simple. All you have to do is go to the name, go to the position of the field label, and select from the drop-down float above, and the system will do all the rest work for you in the system from there. So that's called the float above label. Really, really handy little tool. Check it out. You might find nice places to use it on your forms. And again, just really slick because when your form comes up, you still see the labels, but as you start putting in stuff in here, it kind of does that nice animated effect and moves it up here. The controls work exactly the same. So if you have validations, other things like that, it's just a labeling or technique that is really nice within the system that you can tap into. So that is the float above label. Thought that would share with everybody and let you know what's going on there.
Very cool. I've just
Cool.
used that recently in an app myself, and it is really cool. I think I used it with the compact theme, so it was really tightly spaced together, but it was good.
Yeah, that's the thing. Actually, let's go ahead and show you that. That's a good point. Right now I'm using this, but I'm not using the compact theme. Now when I use the compact theme, it
You can
does
fit a ton of stuff on
reduce.
here. Yeah,
Yeah,
great
it
for the
just
desktop,
looks
bad for mobile. It's a little small for mobile.
yeah, exactly. Other tricks for there. Let me go ahead and do something real quick. Project. Okay, so that was sort of the user interface element. What I want to do is show you a cool little technique in Xbasic, something I use a lot to make my code really simple to use. And in order to do so, first, I need a connection to my database. And so this is a new project I just threw together so I could demonstrate a couple things here. So the first thing I'm going to do is go to Tools, Alpha DAO Connection Strings. For people who've seen this forever, good. For newbies, check this out. Now, this is where you would set up your connection to any kind of data source. And one of the coolest things about connection strings is once you've set them up, they work with all the different controls. You don't have to set up special stuff. It basically creates we call it portable SQL, a way for you to connect to different types of databases. And actually now NoSQL databases, SharePoint, a whole bunch of systems there to simplify and disconnect your user interface from the database. So it makes you don't have to do a lot of coding. And again, super simple and easy to use and works with all the different types of databases. Now, as we've shown before, if you don't have a database set up, you can just use a built-in one that we've added into the system. And so in this case, it's a demo Northwind. When I click that, it's going to create a database. It's already got a built-in one, either Access or SQLite. You can use each one, whichever you prefer. And if it's Access, it's an Access file. You can open up Microsoft Access and do those things here. So I'm going to go ahead and create the name connection string. It's going to ask me, do you want to use the existing SQLite database or do you want me to create a clean copy? I usually create a clean copy for each project. So go like that. And now it's created my connection string. So I can go in there and just test that connection, working great. So it did all that work. And now this is a newer feature, I can immediately look and see what that looks like. So as you can see, it's got a series of tables here. It's based on Northwind, so it's very similar. But you have things like customers, employees, etc. You can see the file, the structure, the schema, what the columns are and pieces here. So that is your ability to quickly create. So if you're just experimenting, playing, doing stuff, use this to create a pre-made sort of connection string that's good to go. Another thing I use it for a lot is when I send in any kind of bug report and I want to demonstrate something and it needs the data connection, I try to create a sample of it using the built-in connection string, the AA demo Northwind. And the reason why I do that is because then when it goes into the development team, they don't have to worry about connecting to my database server, setting up, importing data. They can merely just go in, modify that connection string. It's the same database they have than I do. And thus they can focus on the problem versus setting up the environment to see what the environment or what the problem is. So highly suggest if you're going to submit a trouble report or ticket and it has an issue involved connecting to a database, then I think what you need to do is really create this and include that in your sample, and you'll get a lot faster results. So that's a little touch here. So let's go ahead and close this here. So now I have my Alpha DAO connection string, and I'm going to jump over to Xbasic. Okay, so what I want to do is I want to create a new Xbasic script. And as we've talked about Xbasic, there are many different ways for you to kind of create Xbasic to use in your project. You can create function libraries, modules. The one I like a lot is class, but you can also create little scripts that you can use to run. Now, very important about this, these scripts only live on your local machine. They're a development tool. Function libraries, modules, and classes get copied up to the server. So if you do some scripting and you do it here, this is only for stuff on your local system. Maybe you're writing some little scripts to do utilities or test things out or do things along those lines. But if you're going to actually deploy Xbasic to the backend server, you need to use it as a function library, module, or Xbasic class. So let's go ahead and click a new Xbasic script. Now, before I jump into that, I'm going to show you what I'm going to talk about today. And that's a really cool function, And I'm talking about this for two reasons. One is that it's one I've been using, but they've just recently enhanced it, which makes it even more powerful than before. It's called the SQL Lookup Function. Now, you've always had the ability to script and collect data. In fact, in the system, you can use the Xbasic SQL Actions code generator to query the database and put it into a JSON format. But I'm going to let me go ahead and show you that real quick because I want to show you the difference in terms of size, in terms of amount of code, and why I like SQL Lookup so much. So to show you where I got that from, I'm in my script here. I'm right-clicking in the white space. I'm going to Genie's Xbasic SQL Actions code generator, and I'm going to select the first one, which is query a SQL database to get some JSON data. Very handy because all of our user interface elements now, like lists and view boxes and things like that, custom controls use JSON data. So I'll click OK. So now this asks me, okay, you want to get this data from a database, tell me which one to go to. So this is where I'm going to use the connection string. I'm going to use the table, and I'll just use, let's say, employees. I can tell it what fields I want. So I'm pulling like 4 fields, and then I can set a filter. And here's my code that's been automatically generated. So I'm going to go ahead and test this. And you can see that it's basically pulling a bunch of data back from the database. And I can add in filtering and things like that. I'll copy this clipboard. And I could save this, but I'll go ahead and click OK. And now I can paste it. So as you can see, now I've got pre-made code. It will do all I need, it returns it. But as you can see, there's probably about 20 lines of net code in here that was generated. Now, this is super flexible. You can do very complex arguments and other things like that. So again, this is kind of your industrial strength solution. But often you just want to go, you know what? I want to look up in the employee table and I just want to pull someone's name out of it. And so you want something very simple to do that. So with that, what we can do is use the SQL lookup tool. So first I'm going to go here, and what I want to do is I want to find an employee ID. I want to look at my database. Well, I guess I could, I need to get it out of that SQLite database. So I'm just going to go here to Tools, Database Explorer. I'm going to add my connection string in here. And then I can go look at it, and I can right click here and say Show Data in Table. So this shows me my data in there. So notice I didn't have to go to an external tool or anything like that. Just kind of a handy dandy feature to have. So I've got a employee table. Here's some information, employee ID, last name, first name, and number here. So let's say I want a real simple script where I need to pick up someone's last name. I know their ID, but I need to pick up their last name. Now, again, I could use that SQL Actions generator and it would work perfect, but it's a little bit robust. So let's go ahead and I'm going to close this. And I'm going to go over here and I'm going to go ahead and grab this. And I'm just going to grab this sample and go back in here. Oops, there we go. Paste it. Okay, great. And I'm going to get rid of this stuff here. And I'll go through this in a second. Okay, so now you can see I have a net 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lines of code to get something out of the database. So let me walk through it. The first thing it's doing here is it's dimensioning what's called a connection. SQL connection has to be there. That's part of the script. It depends on it, needs to be there. Secondly, I give it what table. So what table am I looking the data up in? So in my case, it's employees. So I now am telling my script where to go find the data. Now the next one is result expression. What do you want back? That's the result from my call. And so what I want is, in this case, I want last name, and I'll come back and show you that in a moment. So let's say I just want their last name. Now the next part, line 7, is called filter. By the way, if these lines aren't showing, you can right click here and select line numbers from your white space menu. And what it will do is it will show those numbers on the left-hand side. Really handy when you're working with someone else because you can just say, look at line X and do it from there. So this is your expression to pull back the data. Now, very important, this is a SQL expression. So you have to make sure you format it correctly. So for my case, it's employee ID equal to, and I'm just going to put in and hard code it now for 1. Now notice I'm putting in the number 1 because I know employee ID is a numeric field. If that was a text field, I would have to surround it with commas. So it's a little different from using arguments, which are really handy. This, you have to be a little more careful how you build up your screen and do your pieces here, or your script. So I want to go to the employees table. I want to get the last name. And the way I'm going to find that last name is with this filter here. And then the magic occurs. It runs this function. This function passes in that connection string, table, the filter, the result expression I'm looking for. And in this case, I'm putting it into a variable. And let's just go show var. That's a built-in function that will just pop up a little dialog box showing what the result of in this case, a variable. So let's see if this works. Not connected. Did I pick the? Oh, I know what's wrong. I bet you guys can see. That's wrong. Notice in here, I'm saying connection open, and I'm giving a connection string because I copied it from here. Well, let's go back and look at let's really look at what our connection string is. It's AA demo dash Northwind. So I have to give it there. That's why I almost always give my connection string CONN. So it's got to be AA demo dash Northwind. Because what it's doing in this is it's going and looking and saying, okay, project, I have this connection string name called AA demo dash Northwind. Give me all the details. Because if we go back, and I'm sorry, I'm kind of off track, but if we go here and go to the connection string, this is really the important stuff. This is sort of like a short name for it, but this provides it all the data of like what kind of database, what syntax, where is it located at, and maybe in the username and password and things like that. So instead of me having to pass in all this text every time, I can just give it this little name and do from there. And more importantly, when I publish this to my server, I can swap out this saying, oh, on the server, AA demo Northwind is a different select there. So now let's see what happens when we run it. I put in my connection string with the proper name, and there you go, Devolio. So it picked up the last name of the person. So if I want to do someone else, I can just go click 2, and there you go, Fuller. And so it pulls up any of those from there. Now, obviously, hard coding this isn't very handy, so we can add a little code ourselves. We can say dim employee ID as in employee ID is equal to, let's say, 4. And down here, I can dynamically build this by saying plus employee ID. Notice that I've gotten rid of the fixed number, and now I'm passing in this variable here. So we go there, Peacock, change this here, and go ahead and run that. Leverling. Okay, so this is really handy. It's a very short amount of code.
That's a concatenation there of the string and the number that Alpha handles there.
Yeah, Alpha did it automatically. I mean, technically, you should probably do string of that.
String and then how many decimal places and all that.
Exactly.
Oh,
but Alpha
it works.
Great. I'm a bad programmer.
No.
But you can also, in the result expression, notice I'm doing last name here. You can change this. So for instance, you can pass in, you might think, oh, it's going to be last name plus first name, but that will give an error. You have to use the SQL dialect, and it depends. Like for instance, this is SQLite. I wonder if that will work. MySQL does this. Let's give this a try. I'm doing the concat. I don't know. I haven't used SQLite. Let's see what happens there. Doesn't like that. Doesn't know that. Maybe it is the plus. See, notice it's telling me, oh, I tried to run your result expression, and I don't know what this concat is. So maybe that is just plus. And it depends on different, this is non-portable, so it has to be kind of, no.
I think it might be the double
there must be
sign. Double pipe sign for SQLite.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I haven't done much with SQLite, so yeah, there you go. Yeah, good man. So I'll just do double pipe, comma, let's see, comma, double pipe. And then you'll notice in this case, what I'm going to do is I'm concatenating last name and a comma. And actually, I'm going to put a space after that. So you can do that. So really cool because you can do these kind of transformations of the data when you bring back. But very, oh, I'm sorry, Dave. Yeah, I mean, thanks for catching that. Any comments?
Yeah, no, not at all. Thanks. Nope, nothing else. Thanks.
Great. Now notice though that we're bringing back a single result expression. Now we're doing a concat there, but sometimes I need more than one data element out of the data table. Let's say I need that first name and last name, and I want them separate because I need to use them in some way, shape, or form. Now, obviously, I could do the result expression and then strip them out, but it's extra steps. In the more recent version of Alpha, and this is what triggered our discussion today, there is a new version. Is it pre-release? Oh, I think it's actually in the release notes. Excuse me. Go project. This new one called, and I've been waiting for this a long time, SQL Lookup Multi. Pretty neat. So this is an example of it. So the way it works is that it's a little different animal because what it does is it brings it back as what's called a pointer variable. So I'm just going to copy this information right here and we'll run that script. So I'm going to create a new script here. I'm going to go to my web projects control panel. I'm on Xbasic. I'm going to say new, and I'll do another script. I'm going to go ahead and paste that there. Let's fix it so I don't look stupid. Stupider dash Northwind. Okay. So in this case, I'm passing in. Now I could easily do this and go dim table as C equal to employees and pass in that array here. I actually like to do that, to be honest. It takes more step, but it's a little clearer and it's a little less compacted, but I'll leave it in here. Okay. We'll go employee ID is equal to, okay. And then you'll notice that
first line in the quote where it says employee ID, it should be employee IDs.
Yeah, good point. There we go. So again, this is the connection string. This is the table. This is the expression we're using to find the data we need to. And again, I would probably break them up as separate lines. And then last but not least, here are the things you want back. So for instance, I want last name, first name. And you just put a common delimited list of things you want. Now, again, as I mentioned, this is P. This is a pointer variable. So we'll just do show var P. Okay, so you can see very compact representation. You can get this down to like nothing. In fact, you get rid of the CS and just put it right here. So let's give this a run. And you can see, boom, it gives me back a pointer variable with the information I wanted. So now I can access those differently. So for instance, how that works is, let's say I pull this data back, I can just say P dot last name. So what I'm saying is give me just the last name portion of the pointer. There it is, Devolio. Or first name. There we go, Nancy. So the cool thing about this is instead of, before if I had like 2 or 3 things I needed to get out of there, I would just write 2 or 3 SQL lookups, one after another. And it would do 3 calls. So 2 things, 1, more code on my screen, more things to manage. 2, you're doing 3 transactional calls to the database, or not 3 queries. So you're consuming more resources, taking a little more time. In this case, this does sort of kills 2 birds with 1 stone. It makes a single call, pulling back all the elements you want. And you don't have to pull back all the data, just the things you want. And then here you can get then you can get that data in this pointer variable and then be able to use it. And you can do things like if you need this in JSON, you can convert that pointer variable to JSON, you name it. One thing that's really cool about this is that this is all can be changeable. So let's say you are on the fly deciding which columns you want. You could build up this comma delimited list using like a statement in Xbasic And then what it would do is then it would pull those particular data for you. So there's a lot of really fun things you can do it. But this was a nice enhancement, mainly because I used to make multiple SQL lookup calls when I really just want to do one call and execute it on there. So that is the SQL lookup function.
Now,
Let me do
if I could stay there on SQL Lookup for a second.
Oh, sure.
Oh, you're going to paste that into the. Good.
Yeah, let me go ahead and let's grab the SQL lookup function first with the approved way to do it.
The approved
Let me
way.
put that in. Yeah. Oh, you already got, and you got the multiple one already in there. Thank you very much. One step ahead of me.
Excellent. Thank you, Sarah. So what it looks like this one does that the old one doesn't is accept arguments. It doesn't look like the old one accepted arguments.
Oh, interesting. It does. Let me go ahead and check
It
that
does.
out. That's
Take a
cool.
look, and that's a huge deal.
That
because
actually
the
is good
query
too.
That you wrote earlier could conceivably be open to a SQL injection type attack if the value being inserted into that SQL expression was like a user entered value. But with arguments, you get around that problem.
Bingo. That is actually, that's really, really handy because it is a cleaner and more professional way to do it.
Yeah.
Notice this is how you do the filter, and notice in here you're putting in the argument and the arguments. Adds a couple more steps to it, but you know, that is a much nicer deal. So you can see in this case, I'm dimensioning my arguments. I'm adding an argument called what country, and then in my query, it's SQL. And notice I don't have to put in the single quote. So one of the things about SQL lookup you have to worry about is you have to form that expression just right so it knows how to filter. And it's a SQL expression. As you saw, I had to kind of do some maneuvering to get that to work.
Right.
In this
single
case,
quote
this will take care of it.
sometimes, but sometimes not a single quote if it's a numeric value. It seems to me here with the arguments, you don't really need to know about that because the argument will either include the quote or not include the quote, however it needs to work.
Bingo, exactly. Yeah. So, and then also there is SQL records get and SQL query. There are other sort of techniques that are very short little things. There are certain limitations on some of these things. For instance, SQL query I've used before, but there's only certain types of queries you can run with that. It just wants certain things because it's expecting a certain data there. But this is really handy. And as you can see, you're talking about 3 lines of code, boom, you get your data and you're good to go. Versus the Xbasic actions generator, much more robust, but also much more verbose in terms of how much code it generates. And I've written my own code. And again, that also is very flexible, but it's usually 2 to 3 times as much. So I use SQL lookups everywhere. And I really am excited about the multi because it will strip out a lot of code that I have been running and improve performance.
Fantastic.
Awesome.
All right. So this next question sort of harkens back to one that we had before, although actually maybe not. We'll get into it though right now. This has to do with doing an invoice type of arrangement. So, this is a parent-child relationship where you have an invoice header that has like an invoice number and a date and who your products are being sold to, as well as invoice items that go underneath, of which there can be N number. There could be, between 1 and whatever. And so the question is, can you use a list control, or maybe it has to be 2 list controls, to set up a type of invoice situation in Alpha Anywhere so that you could create an invoicing system that would work offline?
Absolutely. To do a demo would take a little longer time, but
That's
absolutely
fine.
you could do
Won't do it now. Yep.
Definitely with 2 lists. So you can, when you're building, let me just go here. Let me just kind of point to it. Oops, that's Xbasic. Lists have the ability to do parent-child relationships, and it's built into the model. And most importantly, and this was very challenging for the development team, it actually can manage multi-level offline parent-child data, meaning adding new parents, adding new children, and then inserting them in the right synchronizing them so they get inserted in the right order where you get the parent and then the children with the foreign key relationship. All of that is built into the list control, which is really, really powerful. So let me go ahead and go into UX and just kind of point to a few of these things to give you a direction. So again, you could set it up as 2 lists, and I think now you can actually have embedded secondary lists in there. So I haven't played with that lately, but try this. So we'll go to list control, and I'll do the quick setup genie, connection string. Go ahead and take the, is it orders? I guess, yeah, let's try orders, field list. Okay, and we'll give it a detail view. I haven't done this one in a long time. So we'll just go ahead and look at it real quick. So you can create your first header kind of order level here, and it's all wired up from there. So let me go through here and see if I can set that up really quick. Again, it's been a while since I've done this, but now I can create a new list. And I'm going to call that list 2. In this case, connection string is the same connection string. Table is order details. Field list. Grab these things here. Okay. Now, very interesting, you'll notice something new on this one. It goes, oh, we already know you have a list control on your screen. So we're going to give you the option. I'm going to go ahead and get detail view of a parent list. So now I'm going to say, oh yeah, this does have a parent list. It's going to ask me, well, what list is that? Because I could have more than one. So it's going to be list number 1. And then we have linking fields. Order ID is in the parent, and the linking in here is order ID in the child. So I'm giving it, what is the other list? Should we preload data, which is great for offline, because if you pull down a set of orders, you need to bring that list of order items so that when you're offline, you don't have to make calls back. Let's go ahead and save this. Oop, I put it in the wrong container. So let me move this container here. By the way, I could use these up arrows, but I'm going to cheat and use this little one here. Looks like stack group here, and so I'll go there. Okay, and we'll go like that. Put them side by side. So if everything works correctly, if I've done things correctly, it's going to preload both lists. So it's pulling down all the information we need. So there's the order ID. There's my orders here. Let's do this. I'm going to make this a little nicer. So I'm going to go ahead and put this. Oh, I see what's going on. Its list is in the wrong place. There we go. So let's go ahead and do it now. Now this will be a little more visually interesting. Okay, so on the left-hand side, and I'll make my screen a little bigger. So we have our orders here. This is my top level list. When I click on there, notice what happened here. It's automatically connected. So the classic invoice, you have an invoice header, invoice line items, go here. And then down here, I can say, okay, order ID, 10257, 100. This can be automatically priced. And then product ID is say 27, quantity 200, and save that. And now you have a new item here, and it's got the right. And so so it just works the same. Alpha takes care of doing 2 key things. One is it automatically pulls down the orders and their items and populates for them. It also automatically filters everything for you, and everything else works the same. You know what? I'm going to try a new record here. Let's try a new record. I'm not going to put in order ID, but I'm going to just see if this item does it automatically. I haven't done this a long time. So 27, 100, and discount maybe 10. See what happens. Yeah, I think I have to set the default value of order ID to be the selected item here, but that's not a big deal. It only takes a few minutes to do that. But this is really powerful because it takes away a lot of that work for you, and this can work offline. It's not just online. It will actually pull down this data, and let you manage it, and then push all that data back up to the server for you as needed. Great question. Thank you.
Now, as a nicety, you'd probably want to combine your synchronize buttons because it doesn't make sense to synchronize, say, just the items and not the headers and things like that. But yeah, it looks like you've got it there. Yeah, very nice.
Yep. Yeah,
Awesome.
it's a lot of
Yeah.
fun. And, again, they do a lot of the heavy lifting in terms of all the management of the data. So I don't have to worry about writing code to sync these two pieces up. I can hide certain data and things like that and just focus on the interface and using the tool itself. Really, really handy. And then in the actual synchronization, it understands as the parent child. So it knows how to synchronize data. So like, for instance, if I create a new parent and I create some new list items for this child, it's going to sync the top level parent first, make sure it has that unique ID for those new records. And then when it syncs the child, it's going to use those unique IDs there. So it handles all of that stuff for you behind the scenes. So you don't have to write a whole bunch of code either on the server or on your local machine. Pretty handy stuff.
That is terrific.
And I
Thank
believe
you.
it's patented, if I'm not mistaken. Well, I think we have a patent around this.
We may have on that. We have it on a bunch of different of our offline technologies, as a matter of fact. Yep.
Yeah, very cool stuff.
All right. So this question harkens back to last week, and it's when using a detail view, the inside list beneath row option, the one that we're talking about, which lets you show that detail view below the row
Yes.
in your list. The question is that you could put a container in that area, but where should you put that container in your layout? This person says they put it into the panel header or sometimes into the panel footer. I'm just wondering what the best practice might be for that.
That's a good question. I mean,
Now that container doesn't display, right, until it's called upon.
no, it's
Isn't
a
that right?
hidden
So,
kind of thing there.
yeah.
So, I mean, the container obviously surrounds the fields you want to display when that expands, because it does a little trick of moving
Yeah.
things out of the way and rendering a div where they are. This is basically just a div component behind the scenes from there. But as far as where to put it, I guess I'm not fully engaged on it from that. So that's a good question. I'd have to look into it, to be honest. I don't have an answer off the top of my head.
Okay.
Good question, though.
Yeah. And let's see if we got another one here, because we have another minute left. Someone asks, oh yeah, I see that you can link lists together. Can you have a search part for it? And does that search part look through both lists, or does it just look through one? I haven't played with that one either.
Oh man, yeah, I know. Those are like, wow, detailed that I'll have to go look in and see what come up with that. So egads. Sorry, I'm like batting zero.
No, not at all. Send that question. Actually, if we can't answer it, go ahead and send that question to guides, GUIDES at alphasoftware.com. We're happy to take a look for that question. It looks like we have run out of questions, or at least run out of the questions we can answer. Actually, I think we've run out of questions here. But again, any future questions, send them off to that guides address,
Please.
and we are happy to take care of it. Dion, thanks so much for presenting
Thank you.
today.
Sorry for the delay.
And Sarah, thanks so much for
Yeah.
helping out and getting all the right answers to the questions behind the scene. Really appreciate it. If you do have future questions, you know the email address. I won't repeat it, but we hope to see you at our next week's webinar. Till there, stay well. Take care and goodbye.